Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. Some of the most prominent climate authorities say that the world is going to end very soon because of global warming.
They were said that we had more time. We don't have the time now. The goals are different because the necessity is there. We don't have a lot of time. We don't have much more than 10 years, for real.
Millennials and people and Gen Z and all these folks that come after us are looking up, and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it?
Earlier this week, the United Nations Secretary General said we are nearing the point of no return for global warming. And in 1989, the United Nations said we only had until the year 2000 to save the planet from global warming. June 29th, 1989, governments have a 10-year window of opportunity to solve the greenhouse effect before it goes beyond human control. Their deadline date of 23 years ago was before Greta Thunberg was born, but later the United Nations made her their leading climate spokesperson.
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones.
That's true. She was very lucky because according to the United Nations, she never should have been born. And 5 years ago, she announced that we only had until the year 2023 to save the planet from global warming. If Greta is correct, sometime around June this year, humanity will be wiped out. The Washington Post agrees with Greta and AOC that the world is going to end soon because of global warming. Stephen Hawking said that we're close to the tipping point where global warming becomes irreversible. Trump's action could push the Earth over the brink to become like Venus with a temperature of 250 degrees Celsius and raining sulfuric acid, he told the BBC. That was an interesting prediction by Stephen Hawking because the growth rate of atmospheric carbon dioxide is completely independent of which party controls the White House. The growth rate of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere would have been exactly the same if Obama and Biden had never stopped squatting in the Oval Office. In 2006, Al Gore made a science fiction movie which he's given the Nobel Prize for, and he said we'd only had 10 years to save the planet from global warming. January 26, 2006. Unless drastic measures to reduce greenhouse gases are taken within the next 10 years, the world will reach a point of no return. Let's watch a little bit of the science fiction movie which won Al Gore the Nobel Prize.
Now, if you'll bear with me, I want to really emphasize this point. The crew here has tried to teach me how to use this contraption here, so if I don't kill myself, I'll... It's already right here. Look how far above the natural cycle this is, and we've done that. But ladies and gentlemen, in the next 50 years, really in less than 50 years, it's going to continue to go up. When some of these children who are here are my age, here's what it's going to be in less than 50 years. You've heard of off the charts. Within less than 50 years, it'll be here. There's not a single fact or date or number that's been used to make this up that's in any controversy. The so-called skeptics look at this and they say, so? That seems perfectly okay. Well, again, if on the temperature side, if this much on the cold side is a mile of ice over our heads, what would that much on the warm side be? Ultimately, this is really not a political issue so much as a moral issue. If we allow that to happen, it is deeply unethical.
Let's take a closer look at Al Gore's deeply moral and ethical Antarctic ice core graph. The blue line shows Antarctic temperatures and the red line shows the amount of carbon dioxide trapped in the ice. You can see that the amount of carbon dioxide and the temperature in Antarctica roughly track each other over the last 600,000 years. But they stopped tracking each other several decades ago. Carbon dioxide is increasing very rapidly, but there hasn't been a corresponding increase in temperature. For some reason, Al Gore didn't seem to notice that. If carbon dioxide was driving the temperature in Antarctica, we should have seen a sharp spike in temperature as well, which does not exist. In fact, satellites show no warming in Antarctica at all over the last 45 years. Al Gore made the assumption that changes in atmospheric carbon dioxide was the cause of warm periods and ice ages. This is the same mistake which one of Greta Thunberg's distant relatives, Svante Arrhenius, made in the 19th century. He thought that carbon dioxide controlled Earth's temperature, and like Stephen Hawking, predicted that we would get close to the boiling point because of the burning of fossil fuels. But Arrhenius' theory was shown to be incorrect in 1901 by Nobel Prize-winning physicist Knut Angstrom. Arrhenius thought that dropping carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere were the causes of ice ages, but Angstrom showed that Arrhenius had no idea what he was talking about. Angstrom demonstrated experimentally that changing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere had very little impact on the atmosphere's radiative balance. One of Arrhenius's primary mistakes was that he didn't recognize that water vapor was far and away the most important greenhouse gas. 105 years after Angstrom showed what was wrong with Arrhenius' theory, Al Gore made the same mistake in his science fiction movie. The historical record of the last 600,000 years show that atmospheric carbon dioxide levels and temperatures closely track each other. But it's not the carbon dioxide levels driving the temperature, it's the other way around. Al Gore put the cart before the horse. When ocean temperatures increase, the solubility of carbon dioxide in the water decreases. This forces gases out into the atmosphere, causing atmospheric carbon dioxide to increase. Everyone who has ever opened up a warm beer knows that a lot of carbon dioxide foam comes out. This is for exactly the same reason. It would be nice to think that Gore's mistake was innocent, but it wasn't. The movie's producer, Laurie David, wrote a children's book in which she put this fraudulent graph. She reversed the labeling on the x-axis to make it look like carbon dioxide-led temperature, when in fact the relationship is the other way around. The temperature increases or decreases, and that causes changes in atmospheric carbon dioxide. The movie's producer, who's a good friend of Al Gore, knew that this graph doesn't show what Al Gore claimed it did in the movie. In fact, it shows the exact opposite of what Al Gore was saying. The movie was completely fraudulent, and it was shown to billions of school children around the world. If we look back a lot further in Earth's history, we can see that there's essentially no relationship between carbon dioxide and temperature. 430 million years ago, there was a very severe ice age at a time when atmospheric carbon dioxide levels were 10 times higher than they are now. In the 1941 United States Government Yearbook of Agriculture, they wrote, "Much has been written about varying amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere as a possible cause of glacial periods. The theory received a fatal blow when it was realized that carbon dioxide is very selective as to the wavelengths of radiant energy it will absorb, filtering out only such waves as even very minute quantities of water vapor dispose of anyway. No probable increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide could materially affect either the amount of insulation reaching the surface or the amount of terrestrial radiation lost to space." In 1971, NASA's leading climate experts, Rasool and Schneider, reported the same thing. They said it is found that even an increase by a factor of 8 in the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is highly unlikely in the next several thousand years, will produce an increase in the surface temperature of less than 2 degrees. And here we are 52 years later with the United Nations still pushing the identical scam which Angstrom debunked 122 years ago. This is the third consecutive century of the global warming scam. Toto has been pulling back the curtain on climate nonsense for the past 15 years. You can visit him, Kyrie Caesar, Toki Upla, and the 4 new puppies on the web at realclimatescience.com.